You stole my wife. I just returned the set of Justice.
Marriage is like a good bourbon. It only burns at the end. And brother, I was feeling the fire now. My name is Nate Ellison, and at 43, I thought I had life figured out. Nice house in the Minneapolis suburbs, decent job as an accountant at Henderson and Associates advertising agency, 2 kids in college, and a wife who still turned heads when she walked into a room. Marta was the creative director at our agency, brilliant, ambitious, and lately, cold as a Minnesota winter. "You're working late again?" I asked, watching her pack her laptop bag for the 3rd time this week. "Trevor called an emergency meeting about the Morrison account," she said without looking up. Trevor Grant, our new CEO, had arrived 6 months ago like a tornado in an Armani suit. 46, divorced, drove a silver Porsche that cost more than our mortgage. At 9 p.m. on a Thursday? Marta finally looked at me, her green eyes flashing with irritation. "Some of us care about our careers, Nate. Not everyone can coast along counting other people's money." That stung. I'd been with Henderson for 15 years, worked my way up from junior accountant to senior financial analyst. But to Marta, I was just the guy who made sure the lights stayed on while she created award-winning campaigns. After she left, I sat in our living room, nursing a beer and staring at the family photos on the mantle. Ross, 21, studying engineering at the University of Minnesota. Amelia, 19, pre-law at Northwestern. Both kids had inherited Marta's sharp wit and my stubborn streak, a dangerous combination. The house felt too quiet, too empty. 3 hours later, Marta's key turned in the lock. She looked flushed, her carefully styled blonde hair slightly mussed. "How was the meeting?" I asked from the couch. "Fine, productive." She kicked off her heels and headed for the stairs. "I'm exhausted. Going to bed. Want to talk about—" "Not tonight, Nate." I sat there until midnight, finishing my beer and wondering when my wife had become a stranger. The next morning brought Victoria, Marta's 39-year-old sister, armed with coffee and gossip. Victoria was everything Marta wasn't, loud, dramatic, and completely without filter. She burst through our kitchen door like a one-woman hurricane. "God, you look terrible," she announced, setting down 2 Starbucks cups. "Late night with the hubby?" Marta worked late, again. Victoria's perfectly plucked eyebrows shot up. "Oh, honey, you really don't know, do you?" Something cold settled in my stomach. "Know what?" Nothing. She waved a manicured hand. "Just that Marta's been having so much fun at work lately. All those late meetings, weekend conferences. She's really blossoming." The way she said blossoming made my skin crawl. "Victoria, if you've got something to say, I'm just happy for my sister. She deserves some excitement in her life, some passion." Her smile was razor sharp. "Trevor seems like such an interesting man. Successful, handsome. I heard he has a yacht." My coffee suddenly tasted like ash. Over the next week, I started paying attention. Really paying attention. Marta's phone, which used to lie casually on counters, now stayed glued to her side. She'd changed her passcode. I knew because I'd tried our anniversary date and got locked out. She bought new lingerie, claiming it was for confidence at work. She started going to the gym at odd hours, coming home with that same flushed look. And the credit card statements. I handled our finances, so I saw everything. Charges at the Glass House, an upscale hotel downtown, purchases at boutiques I'd never heard of, a jewelry store receipt for $800 for earrings I'd never seen her wear. When I confronted her, she flipped the script faster than a politician caught in a lie. "You're being paranoid, Nate. This is exactly why we're having problems. You don't trust me, you don't support my career, and now you're going through my things like some jealous teenager." "I'm not going through your things. I pay the bills. I see the charges. Those are work expenses, client meetings, team building. Maybe if you showed half as much interest in your own career, you'd understand." She was good. I'll give her that. For a moment, I almost believed her. Almost. But then I found the burner phone. It was a Tuesday evening. Marta had rushed off to another emergency meeting, leaving her gym bag by the door. I wasn't snooping. The zipper was open, and I could see her water bottle had leaked. I was just trying to save her workout clothes when my fingers touched something that shouldn't have been there, a cheap flip phone. The kind you buy at gas stations. My hands shook as I opened it. The text messages made my stomach turn. Explicit photos, plans for weekend getaways, and worst of all, conversations between Marta and Trevor that painted me as a pathetic, clueless husband who wouldn't know a clue if it bit him. The final message was from earlier that day. Can't wait to see you at Lakeside Estates tonight. Wear the red dress, the one your husband thinks you bought for his birthday dinner. T. I sat on our kitchen floor holding evidence of my wife's betrayal and laughed. Actually laughed. Because if she thought I was clueless, she was about to get a very rude awakening. Nate Ellison, the boring accountant, was done being underestimated. I'm not James Bond, but I can Google with the best of them. And what I found about Lakeside Estates made my blood boil. It was an exclusive resort community about an hour north of the city, complete with private cabins, a marina, and enough privacy for cheating spouses to conduct their sordid affairs. The next evening, I told Marta I was going to poker night with the guys. Instead, I drove to Lakeside Estates and parked behind a cluster of pine trees with a clear view of the main lodge. I felt ridiculous, a middle-aged accountant playing private investigator, but I needed to see this with my own eyes. At 8:30, Trevor's Porsche pulled into the circular drive. 5 minutes later, Marta's BMW followed. But she wasn't alone. Victoria climbed out of the passenger seat, looking around like a Secret Service agent securing a perimeter. I watched through binoculars I'd borrowed from Ross's old Boy Scout gear as my wife and her sister walked into the lodge, like they owned the place. Victoria was playing lookout, and she was enjoying every minute of it. My phone buzzed with a text from Marta. Working late again. Don't wait up. The hypocrisy was breathtaking. I waited 2 hours documenting everything with my phone's camera. When they finally emerged, Marta looked disheveled and happy in a way I hadn't seen in months. Trevor had his arm around her waist, and Victoria was taking pictures with her phone like they were on some romantic vacation. That's when I heard them talking. God, that was incredible, Marta said, her voice carrying in the crisp night air. You deserve so much better than what you have at home, Trevor replied, kissing her forehead. Victoria laughed. Nate probably thinks you're reorganizing filing cabinets. He's so clueless. He wouldn't know passion if it came with an instruction manual, Marta added, and all three of them burst into laughter. I sat in my car, watching my wife mock our 20-year marriage, and felt something cold and hard settle in my chest. Not heartbreak. I was past that. This was pure, calculating rage. The next morning, I called in sick and drove to the office of Danny Kowalski, an old friend who'd left the police force to become a private investigator. Danny was everything you'd expect from an ex-cop turned PI, grizzled, cynical, and very good at finding dirt. Jesus, Nate, you look like heck, he said, pouring coffee that could strip paint. I need your help, Danny. My wife is cheating. Most of them are. You want proof for the divorce? I want everything. Financial records, phone logs, hotel receipts. I want to know every lie she's told and every dollar she's spent. Danny studied me over his coffee cup. This isn't about divorce, is it? No, this is about justice. Within 3 days, Danny had delivered a file that made my head spin. Marta wasn't just cheating. She was systematically looting our joint accounts to fund her affair. The Glass House hotel suite, charged to our business credit card as client entertainment. The jewelry, employee incentive purchases. She'd even used our home equity line of credit to pay for a weekend trip to Chicago with Trevor. But the worst part was what Danny found in the agency's internal emails. Marta and Trevor had been conducting their affair through the company's server, and their messages revealed a level of contempt for me that was stunning. Poor Nate, one email read. He thinks I'm working late to impress him. If only he knew I'm working late to forget he exists. Another gem. T, can't wait until we can be together openly. Just need to figure out how to handle the Nate situation without losing half my assets. Maybe we can find grounds for fault divorce. Trevor's response. Don't worry about it, beautiful. I have lawyers who specialize in making problems disappear. That afternoon, I decided to have a conversation with Trevor. I found him in the agency parking garage, polishing his precious Porsche. Nice car, I said, walking up behind him. He jumped, dropping his chamois. Nate, you scared me. Shouldn't you be upstairs crunching numbers? Probably. But I wanted to talk to you about my wife. His face went pale, then flushed red. I don't know what you're talking about. Sure you do. Marta. Blonde, green eyes, creative director. Also happens to be married to the guy who signs your expense reports. Trevor straightened up, trying to regain his composure. Nate, if you're implying... I stepped closer, invading his personal space. I'm not implying anything. I'm stating facts. You're sleeping with my wife. You're using company resources to fund your little love nest. And you're both stupid enough to think I wouldn't figure it out. You can't prove anything. I pulled out my phone and showed him a photo of him and Marta at Lakeside Estates. His face went white. Here's what's going to happen, Trevor. You're going to end this affair. You're going to transfer to another agency. And you're going to pray I don't decide to share these photos with the board of directors. He tried to bluster. You can't threaten me. I'll have you fired. I laughed and knocked his car keys out of his hand. They skittered across the concrete floor as several other employees walked by, staring. Careful with that Porsche, Trev. It's not as easy to handle as my wife. The employees snickered, and Trevor's face burned with humiliation as he scrambled to pick up his keys. But I wasn't done, not even close. That night, Danny called with news that made my blood run cold. Nate, you need to see this. Your wife and her sister have been planning something big. I got access to Victoria's phone records, and she's been researching divorce lawyers, specifically lawyers who specialize in cases involving domestic misuse. What are you saying? I'm saying they're setting you up. They're going to claim you're violent, get a restraining order, and take you for everything you're worth. The affair with Trevor? That's just the opening act. The real show is about to begin. I hung up the phone and stared at the ceiling, my mind racing. They thought they were so smart, so clever. They thought they could destroy me and walk away with my money, my house, my reputation. They were wrong. If the law's too slow, make the law irrelevant. That became my motto as I planned my counterattack. The next morning at Henderson & Associates felt like walking through a minefield. Everyone knew something was happening. Office gossip travels faster than a computer virus. Pat Morrison, our HR director, was practically vibrating with excitement when she cornered me by the coffee machine. Nate, honey, are you okay? You look stressed. Pat was a sweet woman in her 50s who collected office drama like some people collect stamps. She meant well, but she had the discretion of a town crier. Just work stuff, Pat. You know how it is. Well, if you ever need to talk... She leaned closer, lowering her voice to what she probably thought was a whisper. I mean, with all the changes around here and Marta working such long hours with Trevor, what kind of changes? Pat glanced around conspiratorially. Oh, late-night meetings, weekend conferences. They seem very dedicated to their work. The way she emphasized dedicated told me everything I needed to know. The whole office was talking about my wife's affair, and I was the last to know. Or at least I was supposed to be. That afternoon, I put the first part of my plan into action. Trevor's precious Porsche was parked in its usual spot, a corner space he'd somehow claimed as his own executive privilege. I waited until the lunch rush when the parking garage was empty, then got to work. I'd stopped at an Asian grocery store that morning and bought a bottle of fish sauce, the kind that smells like Satan's armpit. Using a small funnel, I carefully poured the entire bottle into the Porsche's air conditioning intake vent. Then I turned the AC to maximum and started the car with the spare key I'd had made from an impression. The smell would take hours to fully develop, but when it did, Trevor's luxury car would be uninhabitable. But that was just the appetizer. I'd also installed a small wireless camera in the parking garage, the kind people use for home security. It was perfectly legal since the garage was company property, and as senior financial analyst, I had legitimate reasons to monitor for theft or vandalism. At 3 o'clock, Trevor discovered his car. I watched the live feed from my office as he opened the door and immediately staggered backward, gagging. The smell had permeated everything, the leather seats, the carpet, the headliner. He tried to drive it anyway, but had to pull over after 2 blocks, retching on the side of the road. I live-streamed the whole thing to the agency's Slack channel with the caption, "Executive Transportation Experiencing Technical Difficulties." Within minutes, the entire office was gathered around computer screens, watching our CEO dry heave next to his disabled Porsche. The comments were merciless. Maybe he should try public transportation. That's what happens when you're full of hot air. Guess money can't buy you everything. Trevor's humiliation was complete, but I was just getting started. That evening, I moved out. Not dramatically, I didn't storm off or leave angry notes. I simply packed my things while Marta was at another emergency meeting and moved into a furnished apartment across town. I left a simple note on the kitchen counter. Gone fishing, back when the water's clearer. I also made some strategic financial moves. Our joint accounts were legally mine to access, so I transferred my half into a new account at a different bank. I canceled the credit cards Marta had been using to fund her affair. I put a freeze on our home equity line of credit. When Marta came home that night and found me gone, she called 17 times. I didn't answer. The next morning, she showed up at my office, furious and desperate. "What the heck do you think you're doing, Nate? I'm fishing, remember? Just like I said in my note. This isn't funny. You can't just disappear and freeze our accounts. Actually, I can. They're my accounts too. I just decided I didn't want to subsidize your extracurricular activities anymore." Her face went white. "I don't know what you think you know. I know about Trevor. I know about Lakeside Estates. I know about the burner phone. I know about the fake business expenses. Should I continue?" For the first time in months, Marta was speechless. "Here's what's going to happen," I continued, enjoying her shock. "You're going to end your affair. You're going to come clean about the financial irregularities, and you're going to explain to our children why their college funds are lighter than they should be. You can't prove anything." I showed her a photo from Lakeside Estates. Her shoulders sagged. "Nate, please, we can work this out. It was just a mistake." "No, Marta. It was a choice. A series of choices, and now I'm making some of my own." That weekend, I got an unexpected visitor. Amelia, our 19-year-old daughter, drove up from Northwestern without warning. She was smart, perceptive, and had always been able to read people like books. "Dad, what's really going on? Mom called me crying, saying you'd lost your mind." I made us coffee and told her everything. Well, almost everything. I left out the fish sauce and the live streaming. Amelia listened without interrupting, her expression growing darker with each revelation. "I'm not surprised," she said finally. "What?" "About Mom and Trevor. I figured it out months ago." My coffee cup froze halfway to my lips. "How?" "She pocket-dialed me during one of their meetings. I heard things. Things a daughter should never have to hear her mother say about someone who isn't her father." "Amelia, I'm so sorry." "Don't be sorry, Dad. Be smart." She pulled out her phone and played a voice memo. I recorded it, just in case. The audio was crystal clear. Marta's voice, breathless and excited. "Trevor, we need to be more careful. If Nate finds out before we're ready, he could ruin everything. Victoria thinks we should move to phase 2 soon. Maybe plant some evidence that he's been violent. A few bruises, some photos, and we can get a restraining order. Then the house is mine, and he can't touch the assets." Trevor's response chilled my blood. "I know a guy who can make it look convincing. Just say the word." I stared at my daughter, this brilliant young woman who'd been protecting me while I stumbled around in the dark. "How long have you had this?" 3 months. I was waiting to see if Mom would come to her senses." Amelia's eyes were hard. She didn't. That night, I called Danny and told him about the recording. He whistled low. "This changes everything, Nate. They're not just cheating. They're planning to frame you for domestic violence. That's conspiracy, fraud, maybe even assault if they go through with it. What do I do? You get ahead of it. File first. Use this recording to get a restraining order against them. Turn the tables." But I had a better idea. A more complete idea. "Danny, how would you like to help me catch some criminals in the act?" His laugh was dark and satisfied. "I thought you'd never ask." The law office of Sarah Chen and Associates occupied the 15th floor of a downtown Minneapolis high-rise. Sarah was everything I needed in a lawyer. Sharp, ruthless, and utterly without sympathy for cheating spouses who tried to game the system. "Mr. Ellison, this recording is dynamite," she said, listening to Amelia's voice memo for the 3rd time. "Your wife and her boyfriend are planning to commit multiple felonies. We can destroy them." "I don't want to destroy them. I want to expose them. There's a difference." Sarah raised an eyebrow. "Explain." "Destruction is quick. It's over before they know what hit them. Exposure is slow. It's watching them realize that everyone knows what they really are. It's watching their carefully constructed lives crumble piece by piece. You want them to suffer. I want them to face consequences. There's a difference." Sarah smiled. It wasn't a pleasant expression. "I like you, Mr. Ellison. Let's make some people very unhappy. The first step was setting a trap. Using Danny's surveillance equipment, we wired my old house with cameras and audio recorders. If Marta and Victoria were planning to plant evidence of domestic violence, they'd have to break in to do it. When they did, we'd have them on film. We didn't have to wait long. 2 days later, while I was at work, the motion sensors in my house triggered an alert. I watched on my phone as Victoria let herself in through the back door. Apparently, Marta had given her a spare key. She was carrying a small bag and wearing latex gloves. I called Danny, who was parked across the street. "She's inside. Give her 10 minutes to get started, then trigger the alarm." Victoria moved through the house like she owned it, heading straight for my home office. She pulled items from her bag, a broken picture frame with Marta's photo, some torn clothing, and what looked like a small vial of something red. She was staging a crime scene, making it look like I'd attacked Marta in a jealous rage. At exactly 10 minutes, Danny triggered the house alarm. The sound was deafening, a piercing wail designed to wake the dead. Victoria panicked, dropping her bag and running for the door. But Danny had also triggered the garage door opener, and the electronic locks I'd installed clicked into place. Victoria was trapped in my house with the alarm blaring, surrounded by evidence of her conspiracy, and being recorded from 6 different angles. The police arrived 8 minutes later, followed by me and my lawyer. We found Victoria in the kitchen, sitting at my table with her head in her hands, the bag of fake evidence spilled across the floor. "Officers," Sarah said, "I'd like to report an attempted burglary and conspiracy to commit fraud." The police were especially interested in Victoria's bag of tricks. The red liquid was stage-quality theatrical dye. The clothing had been artfully torn, and the broken picture frame looked like part of a carefully staged altercation. Victoria claimed she was just there to retrieve some of Marta's things, but the latex gloves and fake evidence made that explanation hard to believe. While Victoria was being processed, I played the voice memo for the investigating officers. Their expressions grew darker with each word. "We'll need to speak with your wife," the lead detective said. "Of course, I believe she's at work, Henderson and Associates downtown, but Marta wasn't at work." According to Pat in HR, she'd called in sick. A quick check revealed she was at the Glass House Hotel with Trevor, apparently unaware that her sister had just been arrested. The police found them in the hotel bar, sharing an expensive bottle of champagne and laughing about something on Trevor's phone. The look on their faces when the officers introduced themselves was worth every sleepless night I'd endured. Marta tried to play the victim. "Officers, I don't understand. My husband has been acting erratically. I've been afraid to go home." Detective Rodriguez, yes, that was really his name, played the voice memo on his phone. Marta's face went through several colors before settling on a sickly green. "Ma'am, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud and filing a false police report." Trevor tried to run, literally. He bolted from the hotel bar like his Armani pants were on fire, but hotel security tackled him in the lobby. The entire scene was captured by the hotel's surveillance cameras and somehow found its way to social media within hours. The video of Trevor, successful CEO, sophisticated man about town, being wrestled to the ground by a security guard half his age became an instant viral sensation. The comments were brutal, and when keeping it real goes wrong, that's not how you make an exit, boss. Guess money can't buy you dignity. By evening, both Marta and Trevor were released on bail, but the damage was done. The story had spread through our social circle like wildfire. Marta's friends, the ones who'd been so envious of her glamorous lifestyle, suddenly stopped returning her calls. The agency's board called an emergency meeting to discuss Trevor's conduct unbecoming. But I wasn't finished, not even close. The next morning, I drove to Victoria's house to have a conversation with her husband, Jim. He was a decent guy, quiet, hardworking, completely unaware that his wife had been orchestrating a conspiracy to frame me for domestic violence. "Jim, we need to talk." He looked exhausted. Victoria's arrest had made the local news, and their neighbors were already whispering. "I don't know what to say, Nate." I had no idea Victoria was involved in any of this. "I believe you, but there's something else you need to know." I showed him printouts of text messages Danny had recovered from Victoria's phone. Messages between Victoria and Marta that revealed the full scope of their conspiracy. But more importantly, messages between Victoria and other men. Lots of other men. Jim's face went gray as he read. Victoria hadn't just been helping Marta cheat, she'd been cheating herself. For years. I'm sorry, Jim. I thought you deserved to know. He nodded slowly, his hands shaking as he set down the papers. Thank you. I need to think. By the end of the week, Jim had filed for divorce. Victoria's arrest, combined with evidence of her own infidelity, meant she'd be lucky to get anything in the settlement. Meanwhile, at Henderson and Associates, the board had reached their decision about Trevor. He was fired, effective immediately, with cause. No golden parachute, no severance package, no glowing references. Just a cardboard box and a security escort to his car. His precious Porsche, which still reeked of fish sauce despite multiple attempts at professional cleaning, was repossessed 2 days later. Apparently, Trevor's financial situation wasn't as solid as he'd pretended. Without his executive salary, he couldn't make the payments. Marta's career didn't fare much better. The agency couldn't fire her outright. She hadn't been convicted of anything yet. But they could make her life miserable. She was reassigned to junior accounts, moved to a cubicle, and watched as her former colleagues whispered and pointed whenever she walked by. The woman who'd once commanded respect and admiration was now the office pariah. But the final blow came from an unexpected source: our children. Ross drove down from the University of Minnesota on a Friday afternoon, his face grim with determination. He found Marta at the house, packing boxes with the defeated air of someone whose world had collapsed. Mom, we need to talk. Ross, honey, I can explain everything. No, you can't. There's no explanation for what you did. To Dad, to our family, to us. Amelia arrived an hour later, and together our children delivered their verdict. We're not taking sides, Ross said. We're choosing right over wrong. And what you did was wrong. Your father poisoned you against me, Marta protested. Dad didn't say a word against you, Amelia replied. He didn't have to. Your actions spoke loud enough. They left without saying goodbye. That night I sat in my apartment, drinking a beer and watching the sunset. When my phone rang, it was Marta. Nate, please, we need to talk. I don't think we do. I've lost everything. My job, my friends, my children. Isn't that enough? You didn't lose anything, Marta. You threw it away. There's a difference. I made a mistake. You made a choice, a series of choices, and now you're living with the consequences. She was crying now, but I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no pity, no regret. Just emptiness where my feelings for her used to be. What do you want from me? She whispered. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. But I was wrong. There was one more thing I wanted. One final confrontation that would close this chapter forever. The garage door was still broken from Victoria's break-in attempt, hanging at an odd angle like a broken wing. I'd been meaning to fix it, but somehow it seemed appropriate to leave it damaged. A visible reminder of how far my wife's family had fallen. It was a Thursday evening in late October when Marta made her final, desperate play. I was in my old garage, boxing up tools and equipment to move to my new apartment, when I heard a car door slam outside. Through the window, I saw Marta stumbling toward the house, clearly drunk and carrying something in her hand. She was trying to get into the house through the front door, but I'd changed the locks. After a few minutes of fumbling with keys that no longer worked, she came around to the garage. Nate, she called, her voice slurred and desperate. I know you're in there. We need to talk. I opened the side door and stepped out, keeping my distance. Marta looked terrible, her hair unwashed, her clothes wrinkled, her makeup smeared. This was not the polished, sophisticated woman who'd once commanded boardrooms and turned heads at office parties. You're drunk, Marta. Go home. This is my home. This is my house. You can't just lock me out. Actually, I can. The restraining order's very clear about that. She laughed bitterly. Restraining order? You turned my own daughter against me to get that restraining order. Amelia made her own choice, just like you did. You destroyed my life. No, Marta, you destroyed your life. I just made sure everyone could see what you really are. That's when she pulled out the crowbar she'd been hiding behind her back. You think you're so smart, don't you? So clever. But you're just a pathetic little accountant who couldn't keep his wife happy. I backed toward the garage, my hands raised. Marta, put that down. You're drunk, you're angry, but you don't want to do this. Don't I? She swung the crowbar at my head. I ducked and it crashed into the garage wall, leaving a dent in the drywall. You ruined everything. She swung again, this time at my car. The windshield exploded in a shower of safety glass. Everything. I reached for my phone to call emergency, but she saw me and charged. I dodged to the side, and she crashed into a stack of storage boxes, sending them tumbling. Marta, stop! You're only making this worse. But she was beyond reason now, swinging the crowbar wildly, destroying everything in reach. My workbench, the lawnmower, a shelf full of paint cans that crashed to the floor in a rainbow of colors. That's when Amelia appeared in the doorway. Mom, what are you doing? Marta spun around, the crowbar still in her hands. Amelia, what are you doing here? I came to check on Dad. I saw your car outside. Amelia's voice was calm, but I could see her hands shaking as she held up her phone. I called the police. They're on their way. You called the police? On your own mother? You're attacking Dad with a crowbar. What did you expect me to do? Marta's face crumpled. The fight went out of her all at once, and she sank to her knees among the debris, still clutching the crowbar. I lost everything, she whispered. My job, my friends, my children. I have nothing left. You lost those things because of your choices, I said, stepping closer but staying out of crowbar range. Every single one of them. I loved him, Nate. I really thought Trevor and I could be happy. Where's Trevor now, Marta? Where's he while you're here destroying my garage? She looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. Gone. He moved to Phoenix last week. Didn't even say goodbye. Of course he did. Trevor was a coward who ran at the first sign of real trouble. He'd used Marta for love and excitement, and when the consequences arrived, he'd abandoned her without a second thought. The sound of sirens filled the air, growing louder by the second. Marta heard them too and tried to stand up, but she was too drunk and too defeated. She fell back down, the crowbar clattering across the concrete floor. 2 police cars pulled into my driveway, followed by an ambulance. The officers approached cautiously, hands on their tools, until they saw Marta sitting on the floor in a puddle of spilled paint. Ma'am, I need you to put your hands where I can see them, the lead officer said. Marta complied, raising her hands slowly. She looked like a broken doll, all sharp edges and empty spaces. As they helped her to her feet and read her rights, neighbors began gathering on the sidewalk. Mrs. Feldman from next door, the Johnsons from across the street, the young couple with the new baby from 2 houses down. They all stood there in their robes and slippers, watching Marta Ellison, former creative director, former wife, former pillar of the community, being led away in handcuffs. But the real audience was online. Someone had live-streamed the whole thing on Facebook, and the video was already being shared and commented on. The woman who'd once mocked me as clueless was now the star of her own public meltdown, watched by hundreds of people who'd once respected her. As the police car pulled away, Victoria's Mercedes screeched into the driveway. She jumped out, still wearing an ankle monitor from her bail conditions, and ran toward the retreating police car. Marta, I'm here! But the car didn't stop. Victoria stood in the middle of the street, screaming at the taillights, until one of the officers gently guided her to the sidewalk. Ma'am, you need to calm down. That's my sister. She needs me. Your sister needs a lawyer and a good night's sleep. In that order. Victoria turned to me, her face twisted with rage. This is all your fault. You destroyed her. I looked at this woman who'd helped orchestrate a conspiracy to frame me for domestic violence, who'd cheated on her own husband while helping my wife cheat on me, who'd broken into my house to plant fake evidence. And I laughed. Victoria, your sister destroyed herself. You just helped. You think you've won? You think this is over? No, Victoria. I know it's over. The question is, do you? She started to say something else, but the officer intervened. Ma'am, I think it's time for you to go home. Victoria looked around at the crowd of neighbors, at the broken garage, at the debris of her sister's final breakdown, and for the first time, I saw understanding in her eyes. She was looking at the wreckage of her own making, and she finally realized what she'd done. Without another word, she got back in her Mercedes and drove away. The crowd began to disperse, the excitement over. Mrs. Feldman lingered, clearly hoping for more details, but I just waved and started cleaning up the garage. Amelia helped me sweep up the broken glass, neither of us saying much. What was there to say? Her mother had just attacked me with a crowbar, and she'd been the one to call the police. No 19-year-old should have to make that choice. I'm sorry, Dad, she said finally. For what? For all of it. For Mom, for Aunt Victoria, for this whole mess. I stopped sweeping and looked at my daughter, this remarkable young woman who'd protected me when I didn't even know I needed protection. Amelia, you have nothing to apologize for. You did the right thing. Every single time you did the right thing. She nodded, but I could see the tears in her eyes. Will she go to prison? Probably not for long, but her life as she knew it is over. She'll have to start completely over, and she'll have to do it with everyone knowing what she did. Is that enough? For you, I mean? I thought about it as I dumped broken glass into a trash bag. Was it enough? Marta had lost her job, her friends, her children's respect, and now she'd face assault charges. Trevor had fled the state in disgrace. Victoria's marriage was over, and she was facing her own legal troubles. They'd all gotten exactly what they deserved. Yes, I said. It's enough. The next morning, I woke up in my new apartment to find 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. The video of Marta's breakdown had gone viral overnight, shared thousands of times across social media. The comments were merciless. When keeping it real goes wrong. That's what happens when you mess with the wrong accountant. Heck, hath no fury like a CPA scorned. But the message that mattered most was from Ross. Dad saw the news. Are you okay? Coming home this weekend. I texted back, I'm fine, looking forward to seeing you. And I was fine. For the first time in months, I felt genuinely, completely fine. That afternoon, I drove to Henderson and Associates to clean out my office. I'd decided to start my own accounting firm. Several clients had already expressed interest in following me. Pat from HR was waiting by my desk with a box and a sympathetic smile. Nate, honey, I am so sorry about everything. We all feel terrible about what happened. Thanks, Pat, but it's not your fault. Still, if there's anything you need, any references or recommendations. Actually, there is one thing. When people ask about Marta, and they will ask, just tell them the truth, all of it. Pat's eyes lit up. She'd been sitting on the biggest piece of office gossip in years, and I'd just given her permission to share it. Are you sure? I'm sure. The truth can't hurt me anymore, but it might help other people recognize the warning signs in their own relationships. As I packed my personal items, I found a photo of Marta and me at last year's company Christmas party. We looked happy, successful, like the perfect couple. It was amazing how much a picture could lie. I dropped it in the trash and walked out of Henderson and Associates for the last time. 6 months later, I was sitting in my new office, a small but growing accounting firm called Ellison and Associates, when Amelia called with news. Dad, you'll never guess what happened. Trevor got arrested in Phoenix. What for? Embezzlement. Turns out he was stealing from his new company, too. It's been all over the Arizona news. I wasn't surprised. Men like Trevor don't change. They just find new victims. What about your mother? She's working at a department store in Duluth. Retail sales. She had to move in with Grandma because she can't afford her own place. From creative director to department store clerk. It was a spectacular fall from grace. And Victoria? Divorced. Jim got everything. The house, the cars, even her jewelry collection. She's living in a studio apartment and working as a receptionist somewhere. The conspiracy that was supposed to destroy me had destroyed them instead. There was a certain poetic justice in that. Dad, do you ever feel bad about what happened to them? I thought about it. Did I feel bad that Marta was working retail in Duluth? That Victoria was living in a studio apartment? That Trevor was facing federal charges in Arizona? No, I said honestly. They made their choices. I just made sure those choices had consequences. Good, Amelia said, because they deserved everything they got. That evening, I was locking up my office when I saw a familiar figure across the street. It was Marta, standing under a streetlight staring at my building. She looked older, thinner, worn down by the weight of her choices. I could have ignored her, pretended I didn't see her. But I was curious, after everything that had happened, what could she possibly want to say? I crossed the street and stopped a few feet away, close enough to talk, far enough to run if she had another crowbar. Hello, Marta. Nate. Her voice was quiet, defeated. I heard about your new business. Congratulations. Thank you. We stood there in awkward silence for a moment, two people who'd once shared everything and now had nothing left to say. I'm sorry, she said finally, for all of it. The affair, the lies, the conspiracy with Victoria. I know it doesn't matter now, but I needed you to know that I'm sorry. Why are you here, Marta? I wanted to see if there was any chance, any possibility that we could... No, I said, cutting her off. There's no chance. There's no possibility. What we had is dead, and you ended it. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. I know, I had to ask. Now you know. She turned to leave, then stopped. For what it's worth, Trevor wasn't worth it. None of it was worth losing you and the kids. You're right, I said. It wasn't. She walked away into the night, and I never saw her again. I stood there for a few minutes, watching the empty street, thinking about the man I'd been a year ago. The clueless husband who didn't know his wife was cheating. The boring accountant who let people walk all over him. The fool who believed that love and loyalty mattered more than passion and excitement. That man was gone, destroyed as completely as Marta's career and Victoria's marriage. In his place stood someone harder, smarter, more dangerous. Someone who understood that sometimes the only way to get justice is to take it yourself. The storm was over. The shelter had held. And I was still standing.